Hello and welcome to the Indianapolis Open Series. I'm Glenn Jones, joined by Todd Anderson. Todd, you're battling in the Invitational right now, and you're in your Legacy rounds, about to come off your buys, and you have a spicy brew.
Yeah.
A brewing. You've already played the deck a little bit on Magic Online. I know if people happen to follow you or your exploits in the daily events. Obviously, I do, because then I started playing the deck on Magic Online too, and it's a lot of fun. It's a Legacy deck that merges a kind of tempo-y Young Pyromancer shell with the cantrip-based Reanimator deck that we have all come to know and love. You just put a little Entomb, little Reanimate, get your Gitaxian Probe, Cabal Therapy on, and you're off to the races. So let's start first off with, what gave you the idea to play this particular deck, to put these shells together?
Sure. So when I first started playing Reanimator last year, I think for one of the Invitationals, I fell in love with Gristlebrand. You know, the card is just absurd. It's hard not to love a giant flying life linking monster that has Yawgmoth's Bargain attached to it, you know. It really put into perspective like how easy it is for that deck to lose to hate cards, though.
Sure.
Because in that tournament where I first played it, I just got obliterated by things like Karakas, Gilded Drake, Rest in Peace, you know, or a bunch of stuff like that, like just a ton of graveyard hate. And I wanted to build a Reanimator deck that could sustain itself even through, you know, like Deathrite Shamans or like Scavenging Ooze and things like that people main deck. So what I did was I hybridized, you know, Young Pyromancer into the deck. So now I have kind of two game plans going on. If my opponent has a Karakas in play, my fatties are bad, so I play Young Pyromancer. Sometimes I still draw a Gristlebrand, or put Gristlebrand in play, draw 7 cards, and that continues to fuel my Young Pyromancers. But we can't actually rely on them as a win condition all the time.
Sure.
Young Pyromancer is a very versatile threat that a lot of decks have trouble dealing with, especially if they're using all of their resources like Dazes, Force of Wills to keep you from getting a giant monster into the graveyard. Hilariously enough, Young Pyromancer is also very good against Liliana of the Veil.
Yeah.
You know, your opponent, you know, Liliana is one of the better cards against Reanimator because if they have it in play before you start putting big guys into play, it's very hard for you to get out of that soft lock unless you're able to like bounce it or Pithy Needle it or something. But with Young Pyromancer, you're able to generate a ton of other tokens. They're very good against, you know, like Tarmogoyf decks and things like that. But it's really cool. Depending on what your opponent does, you can use your cantrips, since the deck already plays Ponder, Brainstorm, but we're playing Gitaxian Probe also. It gives us perfect information on what we should be doing in the game, which is awesome. But it allows me to pick which game plan I want to do based on what my opponent is presenting me with.
Yeah, I thought the deck was really cool. Obviously, I've already said that. And one of the more fun interactions, obviously, your other fatty in the main deck is Elishnorn, who has a particular synergy with Young Pyromancer.
Yeah, boy.
You can win a lot of games out of nowhere with that particular interaction.
Yeah, one of the very first games I played with the deck, my opponent was playing the Mono-White Death and Taxes deck. And there was a turn where he like tapped out on turn 3 to cast like Mirren Crusader or something. And so all I had shown him though was Young Pyromancer. And so he's just like, okay, cast Mirren Crusader, try to like get my beats on. And I'm like, all right, end of turn, like Brainstorm, Entomb, like Daze your guy or whatever, untap, Reanimate, Elishnorn, hit you for lethal. It was just insane. Yeah. The card's obviously very good by itself though. Elishnorn bricks a lot of decks that Gristlebrand does not, such as things like Elves, Goblins, Merfolk, just tribal decks in general, but decks with a ton of creatures. Elishnorn really shines. Dredge is a particularly tough matchup if you're going for Gristlebrand, but if you go for Elishnorn, the game just ends on the spot. So.
Sure. And we've already talked a little bit about how the deck can play just a Young Pyromancer game. Obviously, you have access to Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Lets you get really aggressive and also lets you deal with some of these hate pairs like Deathrite Shaman and Scavenging Ooze. A lot of people are not going to expect an Entomb deck to be bolting their creatures out of right off the board.
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the cool things about Lightning Bolt in the deck is that normally you just want some way to get Deathrite Shaman off the table so you can reanimate things. Lightning Bolt is not the best answer to every creature in the format, obviously. Like, we could play white for Swords to Plowshares or whatever, but Lightning Bolt has particularly good synergy with Young Pyromancer, and if you're on the Young Pyromancer plan, you're able to use Lightning Bolt aggressively, like to hit them in the dome, make a guy, or just target their creatures while creating a guy and then continuing to apply pressure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So moving to your sideboard, you've gone ahead and taken the tempo plan a little further, and I like that a lot because I really wanted a way to kind of sideboard out of my reliance on the graveyard in order to beat these hate cards, because Rest in Peace and things like that, you can get through them, but they're pretty obnoxious.
Yes.
And having access to more resilient threats is awesome. So you've added Vendilion Clicks and Grim Lavamancers to the board, and I really like that plan. I think it pretty much explains itself.
Yeah, I mean, Vendilion Clicks like a perfect answer to things like Show and Tell, where you just want to like interact with their hand and apply pressure to them.
Sure.
And if you're all in on the Young Pyromancer plan, it's just a great threat that puts a clock on them and pressures their hand.
All right, so let's talk about another spell you're playing. It hasn't seen a lot of Legacy play, but then, that's what Legacy's for, right? Just to play the weird stuff.
Yeah, obviously.
You've jammed 3 Deathmark into your sideboard as your removal spell of choice, and obviously it's a very efficient spell, and Legacy loves efficiency. So tell me why you're going with Deathmark over, something more like you can obviously Innocent Blood or Ghastly Demise. There are a lot of options at this casting cost. So, what sold Deathmark to you?
Okay, so if you've noticed, Deathrite Shaman is half green, which does die Deathmark for 1 mana, which is huge. But also, it's a great card against any sort of white-based aggressive deck with things like Nye the Reliquary, Thalia, and stuff like that. But really, it's just a one mana removal spell that combos really well with Young Pyromancer. I was playing Submerge, but I was under a lot of pressure from my opponents. And sometimes they would just not fetch out their green duel when they had something like Deathrite Shaman, or I'd play against a mono white deck where Deathmark didn't do, where Submerge didn't do anything, but Deathmark just was an all-star. I was playing 4. I cut down to 3 now with a Snapcaster Mage as well, so they can kind of do a little tag team action with Lightning Bolt or Deathmark with the Snapcaster. So it looks good on paper. It feels good. I haven't played a match with the current sideboard, so we'll see how it ends up.
Yeah, I actually very much like the idea of Deathmark specifically, because it feels like all the decks that can overmatch a Young Pyromancer are green and white decks. Like, those are the creatures you're actually worried about killing, so bringing it in just seems like a natural answer to what's going on, and obviously, it's very potent. All right, Todd, well, you've got some matches to play now.
Yep.
Your buys are over. Good luck in the remainder of the
Thanks,
tournament.
Glenn.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for joining us.